You lack nothing. Everything that's valuable has already been placed inside you. It's going to take a little self-inventory to figure out exactly what everything is. And once you're able to change the perspective in your life and how you see your life, you'll have so much freedom and joy.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the What You Don't Hear podcast. Grab some yellow, pull up a seat, toss in those headphones. This is a life podcast. It's what I like to call an open journal dive into people's lives as I sit and I uncover the real story behind my guest journey, finding out what makes them who they are, talking about all the ups, all the downs, all the thoughts and feelings in between as we dig into the parts of their story that we otherwise wouldn't get to hear. Now, who am I? I am your host. My name is Ross Theisen. I'm a creative of many kinds, a maker of many things. And hey, here's a reminder up front. Make sure you're subscribed to this show on whatever platform that you're checking this out on right here, right now. If you really like the show and you want to make sure you don't miss any future episodes and everything around it, you can follow us around social at WYDH Pod. If you're on YouTube, please hit that like button so it tells the algorithm that this show matters to you and might matter to somebody else somewhere. You hear all these things all the time, every day from every creator. I understand, but we gotta ask you because it truly does help out more than you may think. That support goes a real long way in helping shows like this one grow even in the tiniest bit. Now, speaking of support, I've got some other supporters that help this show a whole lot. So I'm going to tell you about the sponsors and partners that I've got for this week's episode, and then we will get into this week's conversation. So first up, this episode is sponsored by the wonderful and very cool brand known as Scatter Joy. So let's talk mental health for a second, because mental health is now more of a prevalent topic of discussion than ever before. However, as awareness increases, so do the associated statistics with it. So while awareness is crucial, it alone does not drive change. And that change is where our new partners in the Scatter Joy enter the picture. So what is it? Well, the Scatter Joy Project is a local organization here in Columbus, Ohio, that transcends the role of a nonprofit. It's more of a movement designed to bridge this gap that people need to get help with their mental well-being. They're fueled by a belief in intentional conversations, raised voices, dismantled barriers, and enhanced accessibility. Its goal is to make mental health care just more affordable for everybody. They're down for the cause and looking to support, among other things. They, of course, sell apparel, with 100% of the profits funding their crisis text line, their own network they put together to help people find the mental health help that they need, and their very own therapy fund. So whether you're looking to get some help, or you want to donate and help support the cause, or you just want to pick up a piece of their really rad apparel that all goes towards the cause, absolutely look into Scatter Joy. So if you want to find out more about them, you can just go find them on Instagram at the Scatter Joy Project, or you can find them online at thescatterjoyproject.com. All right, if you or someone you know is looking for a place to live, well, you may want to listen to this next part, because this episode is sponsored by River and Rich. Located in the Franklinton Arts District of Columbus, River and Rich is that set of colorful buildings right there on Rich Street, and they want you to know that Franklinton is a real cool place to live. Now, River and Rich brings together quality apartments, desirable amenities, and a vibrant artistic community. They offer 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and townhouse-style apartments, all with open floor plans, oversized windows, and modern finishes. The amenities include a huge 24/7 gym, a heated pool, a fully stocked coffee bar, a secure package delivery room, pretty much everything you'd be looking for in a place to live. And it doesn't just stop at the building, because River and Rich embraces and connects with the art-filled Franklinton community around them, with local art and murals featured all throughout the building and the community itself. River and Rich is both a place to go home to and is also becoming a living piece of art in its own. So if that sort of environment sounds like one that you want to live in, well, you can. So go check it out. They offer both guided and self-guided tours, so you can go check out an apartment anytime. Visit their website at riverandrichcolumbus.com for more information. Also, check this out. Because you listen to this podcast, I might be able to help you get a freaking apartment, you guys, because for right now, new applicants can receive up to half off their security deposit if you use the code WYDH pod when applying. So again, for more information, please contact River and Rich. Certain restrictions might apply. Hop over to riverandrichcolumbus.com to get things going and go join the colorful life over at River and Rich. And last but not least for this episode, we are sponsored by our friends at Promo West Productions. If you live in or around Columbus, Ohio, and you're interested in catching a live show, getting that live music experience, well, then maybe you want to check out one of these upcoming concerts that are being brought to you via Promo West. They've got Sublime with Rome at Kimba Live on Friday, August 16th. That one's right around the corner. Then Frank Turner comes to Newport Music Hall on September 16th. JPEG Mafia is at Newport Music Hall as well on September 20th. And then Loveless is at Newport Music Hall on September 24th. If you want to hear those shows again, just hit that rewind 10 or 15 seconds and you can hear them again. It's magic. You can hear every single one of those shows be told to you one more time. But if you want to grab tickets to any of those shows, all you got to do is jump to AXS.com. Or, as always, for more information on these or any other upcoming concerts, if you want to know who's coming to town and when, well, you can find all that information that you need over at promowestlive.com, or make sure to follow them on social at PromoWestLive. And also, here's a good reminder too, that whether you follow them on social or making sure you follow the podcast on social at WYDH Pod, I do constant ticket giveaways with Promo West relatively often, at least once or twice a month, it seems like. So yeah, if you want a chance to maybe win some free tickets to maybe a cool show that's coming through town, make sure you follow us both on social so you don't miss out on any of the fun giveaways that we have been doing lately. So okay, let's get to the conversation for this week. This week is a tremendous talk with my guest, Austin Parker, aka you may know him online via his brand, APFit. And if you can't tell by the name, yes, he's a fitness coach and a personal trainer. As you're about to find out in this talk, he is just a great guy all around who is doing what he can to not only be the best version of himself, but really, really putting the effort to help others become their best selves and truly uncover and serve his individual purpose. I promise you, you will feel some sort of motivation or positive energy once you finish this episode. I know how I felt during and after the conversation when we recorded this talk. It's maybe a new favorite of mine. Just good energy all around. So let's get to it. Let's dive in. Here it is, the story of Austin Parker right here in episode 116 of What You Don't Hear. Austin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here, bro.
Yeah, man. When did we originally chat? Like a year or so ago?
Probably a year or so ago. Yeah. I got wind of the pod, and then I saw my guy Zach on. And just reached out to you and stayed in connection for a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'm stoked we have finally made it happen.
Absolutely.
After a year's worth of planning and trying to figure out when we can make it happen.
We are here.
This is one of those episodes, and I've probably said this a million times on this show, but we don't know each other.
No.
This is everything we are about to learn, we are getting to know for the very first time.
Yes.
So on that note, I usually tend to not really do like deep dive detective work on the guests coming in, right? Yeah. So generally what I know about you, you're a personal trainer, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, is there anything else how would you describe like everything that you do? Kind of open up the doors for me here.
Absolutely. So I do a lot of community work. So we work with different organizations who help bring training and healthy eats and, just information for others, for underserved communities. So we work with mentor groups with young kids, ICE mentors, Aaron Pink, some of the Urban League, Columbus Public Health, different things like that to provide resources for underprivileged folks. So that's a number one thing that we really strive to do in terms of obviously body transformation between personal training, group fitness, and boot camps. But the other side is definitely community driven because, that's a big thing I saw growing up, a disparity of a lot of people when they were in urban climates, there wasn't the Pliables, there wasn't the Whole Foods and everything like that. There was some liquor stores, if we're being frank, some Popeye's chicken and different things like that. So we're trying to just, get that gap a little smaller and give some information and some resources to people who need it.
Dude, I love that. That's way cooler than me just being like, yeah, you're a personal trainer, right? That's incredible.
Absolutely,
okay,
man.
so how long have you been doing all that?
Yeah, so I've been doing this for 8 years. I've been coaching for 8 years. I worked directly out of college. I played college basketball for 4 years. After that, I went right into corporate America. So I worked Nationwide Insurance as a claims adjuster. During that time, I was building my brand up on the side. So I would train in the morning, work my 9 to 5, 8 to 5. Then after, I would take on sessions again. And I was just building it up because it was definitely my passion, but I kind of had some limiting beliefs thinking like, hey, could this sustain me full time? So I did that for a while. I worked for JP for another 2 years. And when the pandemic hit, I was actually laid off of that job at JP. And I really believe that was God kind of pushing me into what my purpose was. And I knew it for a while. And, I just stepped out on faith at that point. And we started doing some online things. And, from then on, for about 4 years, I've been full time.
Nice.
Yeah,
okay. There's so much I want to dive into.
Yeah.
But even like during that time of, the pandemic, layoff, all that sort of stuff, like, is that just kind of where immediately your head went was, you know what, I think this is my opportunity to make this an opportunity, to take this opportunity and change it into something, and like you said, go full time with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I had set dates before, actually. I was like, hey, I'm going to quit in the fall. I'm going to quit in the summer. And I kept putting it off. A lot of times when you're working some of those jobs, it's very comfortable. JP, no slight to them for laying me off, but they're a great company, great benefits. They were paying me decently. And I was on track to climb up and different things like that. But when they laid off half of the team, I was in the middle of a rock and a hard place. But I knew that if I didn't try now, no kids, not married or anything, I felt if I didn't try now, then I'd just be regretting not doing it for the longest. So it was my perfect opportunity, I thought. So gave it a try and it worked out.
Yeah. No, you said that, I guess maybe to generalize it, like the fitness world, health and fitness, whatever, was a passion of yours.
Absolutely.
You had been doing that, building it up on the side while you're doing the normal corporate America job.
Yeah.
How long had that been a passion? Like, when did that passion even start for you?
Yeah, so I actually traced it back, man, oddly enough, to when I was probably about 8 or 9, watching Rocky on the weekends. We didn't have cable, but Rocky came on, like Rocky 3, 4, and 5. And those training scenes, bro, as a young jit, man, I would get so hyped watching them do the sit-ups and the fight montage and the push-ups. So I'd be in my room doing push-ups with them and everything, watching. There was like P90X infomercials and different things that I would jump into just very naturally. And then I played basketball and football growing up. And, during college, I was actually able to get an internship with the strength and conditioning department. And then I learned, different things about training and the nuance. In my 5th year, after I graduated, I was like an intern strength and conditioning coach. And I was able to run the 5 a.m. workouts. And those were awesome, man. High energy, very competitive, music blasting. And it really set the tone for the season. It builds a lot of character. So that's when I really fell in love with it. And then from then on, just was building it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so take me back to growing up. Like, did you grow up here in Columbus or where?
Yeah, so I grew up here in Columbus. We're from Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
My dad is a pastor. So he moved the family for another opportunity here in Columbus when I was about 7 or 8. Went to Worthington schools, Worthington Kilbourne High School. And growing up as a pastor's kid, I was doing everything in church from playing the drums to singing. So that was one portion of my life. And then the other portion was kind of the athletic version. So I was playing football, basketball, everything like that, yeah.
Gotcha. What do you think it was that like drew you more towards the fitness world rather than like continuing in music or anything?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. It's something I kind of go back and forth with. I think the fitness world for me was a mental health thing, to be completely honest.
Okay.
There was a point in college where I kind of lost track of who I was, why I was doing what I was doing. And, man, depression hit me for the first time about my junior year. and seemingly everything was good in my life. You know, captain of the basketball team at that point. We were doing decently well, but it seemed like a dark cloud was following me. And fitness was the only thing where, you know, I could turn those headphones in, turn them on for about an hour of my day. It was directed just towards me and my personal growth and development. And it was also an escape. I knew I could control everything in the weight room from a certain aspect. And it just gave me so much freedom. It gave me so much clarity when I was done. So that's the biggest thing about it. Even be more than body composition, I wasn't trying to get huge or anything like that. But it gave me so much solace. It gave me so much peace that I think instead of music, I went into that area for sure.
Now I'm curious, like, where have you been able to trace it back? Have you been able to kind of uncover it? Or in that moment, was it something immediately, directly that sparked it? Where do you feel like that like depression wave even popped up for you as a junior in school? Like if you had not really dealt with that before, I get, you said this was kind of the first wave of it that really hit me. Do you know where that comes from or where it came from?
Man, that's a good question. And I'm still, we still peel back layers now that we're adults. But I'd say one thing, man, like a portion of me was very performative in school. Coming from inner city Cleveland to a very, more Caucasian school, I was kind of dealing with some code switching, dealing with some cultural things. And I was very good at playing the part. I was very good at, I could be funny, I could be the athlete, I was homecoming king, all these different things, but I was kind of wearing a mask that whole time. And I remember when we won homecoming king, when I won homecoming king, there was groups of friends after the bonfire. They were like, oh, we're going here, we're going to this thing. And I didn't necessarily have a group. So there was a little bit of loneliness just because, hey, I'm faking and pretending to be whoever I needed to be with whatever group I was in. So that was one point. And then, just putting so much pressure on myself. I thought I should have been a D1 athlete, so I wasn't content on where I was. I thought I should be scoring this much, so I wasn't content. So I think it was a bunch of that pressure just kind of boiled over at that moment. And I didn't know how to deal with it, and coping. We weren't really taught that, so I started coping with different things, with alcohol and drugs and different things because I had no outlet. So I think that's what it traced back to, and it kind of just boiled over. And as a young man, a lot of times we don't have anybody to talk to. So instead of talking to my friends, I was just partying, and that wasn't necessarily me. I love to have a good time, but the way we were partying was just not like necessarily healthy, and it boiled over, and I had to seek some help at that moment.
Yeah. Now during that time frame when you're kind of essentially, it sounds like searching for an identity of like who you actually are and not who you are without the pressures of who you think you should be.
That's good.
Right? And I'm curious to also know, like, was there anything that was sort of like that guiding light through that time? Like, was there still the idea of like, well, if I can just do good enough in a sport, that's going to be my thing. I'm going to be an athlete. I don't really want to do the music thing. Or like, even was it that early on? Were you like, no, I'm going to be a coach. I'm going to be a trainer of some sort. Or was all that just kind of lost in the clouds somewhere and you were just kind of in the moment like, I don't even know who I am or what I want?
Exactly. I think it was that, man, because a lot of before, my only thought was get to college, play some ball, get my degree. After that, I didn't have much planned out, man. And I also was dealing with the fact that I had a relationship with God going into college, and I let that go kind of during college. So I had this identity. My dad's a pastor. His dad's a pastor. His dad's a pastor. My uncles are pastors. So I'm like, man, if I'm not working in the church or if I'm not doing this, I'm of no value. So I was like, man, like, am I going to be in the church? Am I going to sing? Am I going to, whatever that was. But when I found coaching, I realized that was like marketplace ministry. And that's what I've coined it because, man, you've been to gyms and you understand how close-knit that family is. Clients, often vent. Clients often, talk about what's going on through their day. Me being there for support, me, saying some encouraging words, me just being there physically to push them and encourage them. For me, like, that was my church. That was my pulpit. And I think when I found that, I was like, okay, God, you're calling me to help others. And when I actually was able to humble myself and realize that greatness meant to serve more people. And it didn't mean for me to be D1, All-State, NBA, blah, 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 well-known, because I had did what I thought was going to bring me joy. I had made myself cool or whatever that was, but I didn't really feel that satisfaction until I started serving others. When I saw others winning and I saw others, have transformation, that's what really gave me joy.
Yeah. Do you remember that first moment of clarity when that hit at all? Like, was there one instance, or was it just, you just look back at some point and you were like, there was a period of 6 months where I really started coaching people and it just started to feel great? Or like, what was that click moment for you where you're like, wait, this is how I best serve not only myself, but through serving other people is how I serve myself. Like, yeah,
absolutely, man. There was my brother-in-law at the time. I'd started training with him once I got out of school. This was before I started APFit full-time. We started working out and, we cleaned up the way he was eating, tracked his nutrition. We trained 3 to 4 times a week. He saw a lot of progress. We started posting the progress, and people were like, hey, keep going. And it was pretty cool. He was my first client at the time, and he was pre-diabetic, and he was on medication. And the day that he was able to get off his medication, he was so excited and also emotional. This is like a grown man, this is a strong dude. And to be able to see that in his eyes, it was like, bro, this is what it's about, you know what I mean? So that's when I fell in love with coaching. I was still working at that moment. So I'm like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But that's when I think I knew, like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So that comes after like sports and going to college.
For sure.
Like
after
that, right?
college, yep.
So let's rewind a little bit back to like that time period we were talking about of like, hey, we're kind of in a depressive state. We're unsure of who we are. During that time frame, or I guess maybe how long did it take, what got you to be able to kind of gradually begin to uncover who you really felt like you were? What were those first identifiers for you of, was it just continuing to play more sports and realize like, okay, I'll just keep doing this until I find something else? Or was there any moment during that time frame that you kind of were able to put some action forward, take a step forward of really being able to identify yourself of, okay, maybe partying and all this sort of stuff isn't actually what I want to be doing?
Yeah. I was able to, we had a, what do they call him? A chaplain. We had a chaplain on our team who was also a counselor. And I remember one day my coach was on me because I was a leader. So I was normally high energy, always the first running sprints and everything. And I was lazy, bad attitude. This isn't the kid you thought you had, I remember my chaplain pulling me aside and we had a talk, and he was like, hey man, let's just talk about what's been going on. And I didn't know that this was going to be my first therapy session. You know what I mean? I just thought we were going to chat. And to be able to talk to another man and really vent, and the way he set it up was really, really, really smooth. And was just talking to me just like a dude, and it just started coming out. That was the first time I was able to vent to another man or to anybody in general. And one thing that we did was a practice that we always did was like just gratitude. What are you grateful for? And I think when I was able to change my perspective, I was able to change kind of my life. I think up to that point, I was worrying about everything I wasn't or who I thought I should be or everything like that. But when he helped me kind of change my perspective and realize that I was so blessed, so fortunate to be doing what I was doing and to have the people around me, it kind of like there was a cloud around me, and it kind of started dissipating just when I started realizing how grateful I was. And then practicing healthy habits, you know what I mean? When you're in a depressive state, you're isolating yourself. So you're not hanging out with the guys. You're not, community's huge to me. And I was putting myself, by myself, not grooming, not caring for yourself, different things like that. So it kind of lifted kind of the veil over my eyes and brought some light to me.
Yeah. Can we talk about the power community for a second? Because I feel like that's such an easy thing to say. And anybody who hears that is like, well, yeah, duh. We all know that having a good community around you, a good support system is great, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like it's also so easy to just isolate yourself, sometimes without even knowing, it's not even an intentional thing.
Yeah.
You can just go months without ever hanging out with friends or doing anything. You just kind of get into your own cycle of, my day-to-day is I go to work and then I go home and then I'm going to binge watch whatever and eat my dinner and then get ready for the next day. And whether you have a family or you're by yourself or whatever, it's very easy to get caught in that cycle. But one of the biggest things that I got to uncover for myself over the last handful of years was how much I truly, truly valued and almost needed a good supportive community. And I don't just mean a couple good friends that you can talk to, right? Like yes, we need that. Yeah. But you mentioned it earlier of like the extra value of like going to a gym and what being in some sort of a class at a gym really does for you. And the people you meet and how you connect and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. And like I've even identified personally that whenever, like if I'm ever feeling like a depressive wave come on, I'm not saying this is the immediate fix or it just gets rid of it, but something that helps balance that out that I identified was when I am feeling down, when I do feel like I just want to sit in my apartment for the next 3 weeks and not do anything, I've actually learned to, yes, I'll still give myself space. I'll still give myself the time to rest. But more often than not, when I can, I'm actually going to book maybe a couple meetings or ask a friend or somebody to go get coffee or something like that, because I learned for me that the value of a good conversation, and not even a conversation about what I'm going through, just a conversation in general, just connecting with another person. Gives something to me. It gives me energy. Yes. And I've learned that when I'm in those depressive states or feeling low, having a good conversation with somebody, I will leave that conversation feeling energized. Yes. I bring something, I take something away from it. And usually it's sort of a little bit of a push forward that kind of helps get me out of that low point.
Absolutely.
And so whether that's going to a gym or getting coffee with a friend or whatever, like I feel like there is vast amounts of value of, it's almost like doing the thing, the opposite of what you really want to do. Yes. It's that, and that's, the gym is a great example of that, because that's the easiest thing, right? It's like, I don't want to physically go do something. Yeah. No, I don't want to go lift weights or run or whatever. That's the most direct example of a way of challenging ourselves to get better. Absolutely. But even mentally and emotionally, doing something as simple as going and getting coffee with a friend or making it a point to go on a walk with somebody or whatever it may be has so much hidden value that I don't think a lot of us, because it seems like such a simple thing, I think maybe it's so easy to overlook. I don't know. What are your thoughts on?
No, I love every aspect of that. I think when we're by ourselves, we can let a lot of our negative thoughts win. We can really think our way into even more depression. We can think our way into sadness. But if we're able to vocalize some of that to someone, even if it's not resolved, even if your friend doesn't have this elaborate, hey, this is how we're going to fix it. Yep. Even if it's vocalized, there's healing there. And like when we do these group workouts, we got the music blasting. There's a little bit of shared suffering. We're all dying. So we all kind of know, like, hey, this is what it takes. This is tough. I know you worked hard. But when we're able to go to a space where we're able to encourage each other, lift each other up, you don't get that at work a lot of times. You may not get that in your friend group who's not, partaking in healthy habits. You may not get that at home. But if you're able to go to a space where hey, man, these people love me. We're going to work hard. And it's not an activity that's going to rob me from anything. I'm not going to leave feeling like, I made a mistake or feeling a little sick or hungover. Like, I'm going to literally leave feeling better than when I came. And it's life-giving. Like your friends, that family. Like, so I encourage anyone to find that community, whether it's a gym or whether it's anywhere. And I know you said like you've had comics over and different things like that, different workshops, because all of that is important. If you're able to, talk about the struggles that you're going through, a lot of us are going through the same thing.
Yeah, well, it's so weird nowadays too, and not to go down this route of a classic podcast conversation, but like with something like social media now, it's like it's very cliche now that we're all like technically more connected, but actually the least connected ever because you feel connected because you can see what anybody did that day online just with a quick tap or a scroll, and you're like, oh yeah, I know what Austin's up to. Yeah, I saw what he's doing. Yeah, no big deal. We don't need to talk now. I don't need to see him. And it's like it actually kind of drives you apart, and I feel like that's such an easy cycle to get caught in. Is you get almost a figment of a version of community or being connected because you don't have to even pick up the phone and call anybody, to talk to them or anything. You just quick DM, comment maybe, or again, just scroll past their post. For sure. And you're like, oh yeah, I know what you did all last week. I saw that photo dump. Cool. That was great. And I'm going to keep going. And then you go, oh, it's been 6 months and we actually haven't talked. That's real. And then, we sit down and wait, that's what you've been going through? And that's what, because again, yes, there's some people, like I try to use social media in the most authentic way. Like I'm going to share when things are bad. I'm going to share when they're good, everything in between. But ultimately, social media usually is, here's the most fun part of my life for the last week. Sure. You don't always know what somebody's going through. And it's so strange now that is even like a balance that I feel like you have to put work into balancing out. Like, does that make sense? It does make sense. It's one of my friends called me, and for about 6 months, we have been back and forth kind of just DMing each other. He does fitness too with youth. I'll repost his stuff like, hey, tap in with my boy. This is my guy. See him doing great things. Love you, man. Love all. And then it's just like, man, we haven't sat down. We haven't talked. We live 10 minutes away from each other. So he called me and I was like, hey, man, everything all right? He was like, what's up, man? And I was like, oh, what's up, bro? And it was just so strange. It's like, man, I could have called you 2 weeks ago. But I think social media gives us that, kind of a facade that we actually are checking in. But that real human interaction, sitting across from each other, even just talking, that's real. That's real interaction. And I think going back to things like that, and that's why community events, I think, are super cool, because I think after the pandemic, we got so digital that, we're just sending texts to each other or communicating on social, but I think being in the presence of people is where it's at, man. Yeah, I mean, we were talking a little bit before we rolled, and I was telling you we do like the bi-monthly kind of community hangout here at the studio. Yeah. And, I think everyone's guilty, but I can say, from the most experience, speaking from like the creative bubble, creatives are vastly bad at actually keeping up with each other, because if you've got a friend who you often sometimes work with on a video production set, you see them there, and then you keep up with them on social, and that's just sort of it, right? Facts. Or if you're an entrepreneur, that's often sometimes the most lonely thing, because it's all on your shoulders and you're trying to do it all, and you might not have a team and all this sort of stuff. And I was telling you earlier, like, that has been one of my favorite things to hear is the feedback after our kind of community hangs here, or, the next day or whatever, when someone texts and says, thank you so much for inviting me to this. Thank you so much for putting it on. You have no idea how much I needed that. And I don't even think I knew how much I needed that. Huge. And like I was telling you, it's nothing special. Yeah. We just come together in one space with no other obligation other than to sit, to like eat pizza, and just hang out and talk. Yeah. And that's it. Yeah, you don't have to show up a different form of yourself. There's no pressure of performing. There's no pressure of hitting a mark. Just show up as you and hang. And it sounds simple, but it's real. And it's like, it's funny to say that like we designed a hangout with a specific purpose, but literally when we started doing them, our reason was exactly that. It was, hey, like we don't see a lot of friends often outside of a work environment maybe. And especially if there's a bunch of freelancers or self-employed people floating around, you're just like panic doing your own thing all the time anyway. So it's easy to miss each other. Yeah. We designed it with that specific thing in mind of let's do it bi-monthly, and where everyone just gets together, and ideally this helps bring people together. It helps build a community. It helps strengthen friendships, whatever it may be. And a couple months in, we started seeing those results where people were like, hey, I know what this is now. You know, because the first couple of this, you know, a couple people here and there
sure.
coming in thinking it's like a networking event, or they're like waiting on someone to do a presentation or something, right?
Facts.
And after a few, people are like, oh, whoa, this is, I needed this. And it was so cool to be like, oh, we wanted to design a space for community. And it literally produced that result. And now it's not just, oh, look how cool we are having people at our studio. It's that person just got to decompress for a couple hours.
For sure.
The one night that month.
For sure.
And just hang out with a friend. And they might be talking about work and creative and ideas and all this sort of stuff. But again, with no other obligation. And that is a thing that I know everyone is actively fighting with on a daily basis now, myself included, of it always feels like we have to be somewhere.
Yeah.
It always feels like there's an obligation of something that we're not doing if you're just relaxing.
That's so real.
And it's such a strange thing that, like, I personally used to be a person who really enjoyed social media. I enjoyed building a self-brand. And I'm not saying I don't now.
Yeah.
But in a different way. You know, I used to really, really like, okay, can I get the followers? Can I get the likes?
Facts.
And I didn't do stuff strictly for that, but I really loved that extra bonus.
Yeah, same.
Right?
I know what you're talking about.
Where now, dude, it is hard for me to even ever promote an episode of this show because I'm like, dude, I don't want to make content. Like, and literally just the other day, I saw, and I have no connection to the brand at all. I just saw somebody else share it. I don't even know if they're from Columbus or where they're from. But I think it was a salon, had posted a video, and it was, it was just like a video panning through their salon or whatever. And just the text on the video said, "We're tired of making content. Just book an appointment."
I love it.
And I was like, that I feel like is where everyone is at right now.
For sure, man.
Because, and yes, it's a content conversation, it's a social media conversation, but I do think it's a self conversation and a community and all this sort of stuff of everything that we're talking about. Because I've gotten to a point where I'm like, dude, I'm tired of being worried about showing up.
Man.
I just want to connect with people.
Yeah.
And do I see the value in social media? Of course.
Yeah.
Never before have we been able to connect with it. You and I wouldn't know each other if it weren't for social media. We wouldn't have, yes, gradually maybe at some point, you know, we have mutual friends and stuff, but in the way that we did and all that sort of stuff, wouldn't have happened without social media.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who wouldn't listen to this podcast if it were not for social media and how they can discover it. There are vast positives, but it's like it's just been ramped up to such an insane point now where I actually think we're on a trajectory now where it's actually turning back. And a lot of people, even people who actively create, I see people daily
for sure
falling off and be like, I'm just done.
Yeah.
I'm done. And I think I bring all that up to say that I think it's because it doesn't ultimately serve the real connection thing. Because yes, you can get a cool comment on a post. That's a bit of a dopamine connection, I get, whatever. But what comes after that?
Yeah.
Well, as soon as you close that app and sit on your couch, you're back to,
exactly.
I'm surrounded by that dark cloud.
Right.
And I'm still just me.
Right.
And I feel like there's always this feeling of we're supposed to be doing something. We're supposed to be grinding harder. And it's like, I feel like somewhere along the way too, that like grind and hustle kind of got masked as self-care. Where it was like, if you're not going to the gym twice a day, every day, while you work, while you take care of the kids, then you're doing it wrong. It's like, can I just figure out what works for me?
For sure.
You know?
When to rest. Like, I feel like I'm in between, and I'm getting way better. Shout out to my girlfriend who's giving me, better content. Like, I was in between, like, the alpha male entrepreneurial podcast mode. If you're not waking up at 4 to do your cold plunge and do that. And then I'm in between this, like, hey, you're already good enough. You don't have to do anything. Just wake up and you're already loved. And I believe both are true, right?
Yeah.
And I believe both are true. Growing up as an athlete, I thought that life was kind of a zero-sum game. Like, if I'm not winning, I'm losing. And if I'm not doing something right now to build up myself, I know someone is. And then I was like, who is this adversary that I'm, like, going up against? Like, there's no more basketball. There's no more competitive real competitive nature. You can get competitive with business, but that just leads down a very dark road of comparison. So I'm in between like this alpha businessman and this like, hey man, like I'm trying to get my mental health back in order. I kind of just want to lay down, you know?
Yeah.
And I think social is giving us that thing of like, hey, you got to create. You got to create because they're creating and you could go viral. It could be the next post. But I understand that fatigue because like it's just marketing at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. It's storytelling. And if you're a creative, I could see, and I consider myself a bit of a creative, how it can be a little more fun because you're telling stories visually and everything like that. But it is very, very important, and I'm learning the importance of literally being where your feet are. Like, I was having conversations with my sister, and I was just on my phone. And she was like, you're not listening. You're not listening at all. And I'm like, you're right. I'm literally scrolling, not looking at anything while we're having a conversation. It's so important for us to be where our feet are. And I think that was another thing that was bringing stress to my life. If I'm always getting news, if I'm always getting this 24/7 connectivity, if I'm always looking at other trainers and gyms and everything all day and entrepreneurs all day, like that's going to give me fatigue, you know? And we really got to be where our feet are and appreciate what's right in front of us at that moment.
Yeah. And that's the thing of like that balance of figuring out, you know, all right, how much of the hustle and grind do I actually want to do?
Right.
Because it's not that it's wrong.
Exactly.
But it's just like the wrong amount is what's wrong. What actually works for somebody, you know? Because like I feel like I probably, more so for me than anything, but like I feel like you and I maybe had a similar trajectory in that sense where like I definitely did years ago. I was like, yeah, grind and hustle and I'm going to stay up all night and do this thing and I'm going to whatever. And you know, why aren't you? And never in a really judgmental way, but like, no, just go, just do it, just blah, blah, blah. And while that did absolutely open doors for me and help me grow in all the ways that I needed and wanted to grow to become a self-employed anything, that was a piece that absolutely worked. And I'm not saying I regret any of it.
Yeah.
However, that method I think is only sustainable for so long.
For sure.
I think at some point, and I've seen this happen with like somebody who creates a form of content, goes massively viral, and they just keep going viral and all this sort of stuff. I've seen so many of those people be like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Because it does become performative at some point. For sure. It does become I need to figure out what I actually like doing. What do I like out of this? Because we are usually ever changing, evolving human beings.
Should be.
We learn new things that we like more than what we previously liked, or we learn a new way of doing something or a new hobby or a new skill. Like for me, I would say why I was so involved in like, I just need to create all the time and that's where my worth comes from.
Yeah.
It's because of that.
For sure.
Because I was like, if I'm posting a really cool picture and someone thinks it's cool, that gives me worth.
Exactly.
But, you know, and I'm sure this just comes with growing up and maturing as an adult.
No, that's
like,
real,
you know, we learn what life is really about. But, you know, over the years, that gradually became less and less important. And yes, it was due to, well, once you achieve that goal, the goal does change. Yeah. Obviously. You stop being worried about this thing because you're worried about this next thing. But what so many of those layers started peeling back for me was, okay, what does actual self-care look like? You know, and then when I started going to the gym, you know, because for years my body was literally like screaming at me of like, we need to do something. And I was like, no, I'm a creative. I'm a business person. That's not what I do. That's not my world. Like, not that I was against it, but I was like, no, that's way outside of my comfort zone. I take pictures and do videos and all this sort of stuff. But then when I finally started going to the gym and yes, the community and all this sort of stuff we've been talking about, it boosted my confidence so much, not because of the way I looked, not because of how much weight I could lift or how fast I could run or whatever. It was just because I was giving myself something that more so was for me than for any accolade outside of that. Yeah. My fitness, my journey, my self-discovery and rebuilding myself had nothing to do with what does somebody online think of this. Exactly. It was, wow, I just learned how to challenge myself. I just learned that I could do something that I didn't know I could do 3 months ago. Yes. And wow, this is unlocking parts of my brain, and I'm sure there's some scientific reasons of, you know, when we really take care of our body, what's that doing to our mind? Absolutely. And, you know, those two things are linked. But it did so much where I began to understand what my value really was. And my value was, well, what's the value I place on myself?
Yes.
Where am I getting that from? What am I doing to help build myself up? Where nowadays I can sit and I can look at both. I do see the value that I get and the fulfillment that I feel from creating something really cool and putting it out into the world and sharing it online.
Absolutely.
Now, do I care if it goes viral or not? Genuinely, no.
Yeah.
I really don't. But I shared it. I love having social media for that aspect of being able to put things out there, connect with other people over some sort of an art or a thought or whatever. While simultaneously, though, I really got that real world side of things under control.
Yes.
Where I was like, okay, like I've always been a relatively positive thinker. But being a positive thinker and being a positive action taker are also two different things.
Wow, that's true.
So for me, like I was always the person who like I didn't want to argue with somebody. I didn't want to cause a fight in something. Like I was always like, hey, what's the bright side here, right? Like
same.
years and years ago, like I had a group of friends who would call me Posy Ross. Like that was the nickname for it, right?
You took it all the way, yeah.
Yeah, that was like the nickname. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm that guy, right? But there was a difference in when I really put action into that.
Yes.
And all of that stuff coincides with like, growing as a person on social media and also growing as a person in real life. Like those two things, again, like where does my value come from?
Yeah.
And what action am I actually taking to give myself value?
For sure.
Those two things I feel like coincided this entire time where now I'm sitting and I'm like, all right, yeah, I can be the positive thinker. But now I'm far more of the positive action taker where I'm putting action behind these thoughts.
Yes.
And learning that mindset isn't just, again, the way you think. Mindset is the way that you act, the way you live.
I love it.
And what can I do with those things now? And that turns into, I promise I'm bringing it back around, that turns into things like community events or taking the action to go and get coffee with a friend when I'm feeling down.
Because it takes action, like you said.
Yes.
And it takes some effort to do that and be intentional about it.
The intention is huge.
Yes.
And not that we're just supposed to one day wake up and clearly know our intention. It does take a lot of trial and error. It does take a lot of maybe being caught up in the social media machine or not going to the gym for years to realize how bad you wanted to go or something like that. Like, that's it. No change is immediate overnight.
Yeah.
100%. Even when I started going to the gym, I realized how bad a shape my body was in.
Yeah.
Nobody was physically looking at me and saying, wow, Ross, you really need to change. Even when I was, they were like, what are you talking about?
Wow,
right?
yeah.
But I knew, right? I knew. And then I got it proven to me. My first month or two, if not maybe 3, were hard. They were difficult because my body was like, we wanted this, but what are we doing?
For sure.
Whoa, like what are these weights we're lifting? What you're running right now? Are we being chased because we just stop running otherwise?
Danger.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like we don't need to run otherwise.
Yeah.
And it took time, and it's so easy to quit during that time, right? Even after taking that leap to try and better yourself, it's still easy to be like, no, this is really difficult, right? This is what it's really like. But again, it took time of going to the gym once or twice a week, then missing a week, then going maybe 3 times the next week, then missing another week.
For sure.
Then I had to literally discipline myself. I had to take the action of beginning to plan my day-to-day, my week-to-week routine around going to the gym.
Yes.
Like that was a huge thing for me. I had the excuse of missing the gym because I'm a freelance creative. Meetings pop up for me every day, or I have a shoot that lasts all day, blah, blah, blah. So easy to make the gym or something like that self-care secondary.
For sure.
It took me making it a point to say when someone hit me up for a meeting and said, hey, can we meet the afternoon at 1 o'clock? Well, I've been trying to go to those 1 p.m. classes at the gym.
Yeah.
So, no. Tell them no. Tell them before or after. And then what happened is all of those meetings and my availability started to be before and after the gym, and I had time all of a sudden to go to the gym.
Absolutely, man. Just being intentional about it.
Yes. And I feel like I just rambled about a bunch of things there, but
real.
I feel like it's a full cycle of, again, how we're using social media, not getting caught up on, hey, you can be a business person, a creative, or whatever. You do not have to hustle and grind on social media. Build a brand. Like, my brain operates in the form of branding and marketing.
Yeah, for sure.
It does.
Yeah.
You could tell me any idea you have right now, and we could spend the next hour on how you could brand it and market it.
I love it.
I'd be like, yes, let's just talk about stuff.
For
right?
sure, yeah.
And, my brain goes to that always. But again, it has begun to coincide with, do I really feel like putting in the effort for that? You know, do I really feel like that's a cool idea for another podcast, but do I really see the purpose in doing it?
Yeah.
Is it just something I kind of need to get out of my system?
For sure.
Or something that I actually want to make a part of my system, make a part of my life, right? And again, that intention goes into all of that, of how I use social media, of not getting caught up on that. And I might post once every couple weeks now, if so, right?
For sure.
Even though a lot of big business cool Gary V pages are going to tell me that if I'm not posting 97 reels from this episode a day, that I'm doing it wrong and it's not successful.
Right.
That's incorrect. Because my success can be based off of the fact of when we leave here, you and I are friends.
Yeah.
That's my success.
That's real.
And then we had a fun conversation about all the stuff we're talking about. And anybody else who listened to this show got to sit in on it, and maybe they feel more connected to you or I at the end of it. That's success.
Yes. And I think that's the thing, defining what success actually means to you and redefining what it is. Because like you said before, I was putting my success and my happiness on what did I do. And it's not really about what you do. If you put that on it, then you're putting too much pressure on your career, putting too much pressure on that one thing. I put success now into relationships. A part of it is my career, my relationship with God, and where I am mentally, like mental health wise and different things like that. And I think the biggest thing about social is we've gotten to a point where we want to look successful. We want to look fit. We want to look like the brand is doing numbers and everything like that, instead of actually being fit, being successful, having the brand legitimately doing well. And I think once we're able to live in a really, really authentic point, then we're not performing anymore. And if you ever have performed for social, you understand the freedom in just being you and just showing up. And if you're able to show up authentically, and whenever you're feeling like it and everything like that, still pumping out things and letting people know what's going on, but really being authentic about it, people feel that authenticity. You know, when people come in and check on APFit, they love it because I spotlight so many of my clients. Like you don't see me on there a whole lot. They see people just like them. So they're like, oh man, Brittany lost 30 pounds and she dropped 11% body fat. I got to tap in. Shantae lost 20 pounds and 8%. Like, man, I'm just like her. Maybe I can do it. So just defining, hey, this is what success actually means. And I think that's huge. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier a little bit of maybe even getting caught up in the performative aspect of building a personal brand and all that sort of stuff. Like, did you have that phase where you feel like you were like leaned more into that hustle and grind culture of like, I got to show up so my brand looks cool? Like, did you have that phase? Or?
Absolutely, man. Like in the trainer aspect, there's a lot of ways you can take it, but it's like, you know, there's always going to be somebody stronger than you. There's always going to be somebody with more money than you, more clients, more blah, 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 more this. I'm not going to win the strongman competition. I'm not going to win the aesthetic competition. I'm not going to win the charisma competition. So I had to tell myself like, all right, bro, where is this actually headed? Because, hey, man, I want people to know my classes get a lot of people. But it's like I started getting into the point where we were below 20 and I wasn't posting. And I'm like, what? Like, this is incredible. 12 people came out to this boot camp. They worked super, super hard, busted their ass, did incredible. And I'm not posting anything just because I'm like, oh, it's not as big as what I thought. And when I got into that point is when I knew, like, bro, you have to realize how blessed you are. It's a Saturday morning. 12 people came out to get better. They had smiles on their faces. They worked hard. They got better. So when I had to realize, like, and I'm so blessed with the team that I get to coach. 5 a.m.s, we wake up, we're working hard. They're ready. You know, my 6 a.m. crew's ready. 7. Like, when I started looking at it from the aspect of, look at their experience. Each person that's walking in is having a personal experience with APFit. It's not me and a crowd. It's me and Jasmine. She came into this class. Yeah, there's 20 people, but she's having a personal experience. How is she walking away from this? How is Chanel walking away? So once I was able to do that, I'm like, all right, I don't really care as much to like perceive to be cool. Because the other thing was, people thought I was like rich. I'm like, no, like we have not made it yet. And like performing like it's cool. You can trick people, get some likes or whatever. But at the end of the day, once you realize what you really, really have, there's real freedom in that.
Yeah. And like we've been talking about like the growth and ever evolving, and life is always going to be changing and everything. And something that is interesting, I feel like, to point out in like the story so far with you is like, back when you were in school, you kind of had that first initial lesson of gratitude, right? When it was like, hey, pay attention to what's valuable. And you were like, oh yeah, like that's okay. I'm going to build gratitude there. But you still, at a different phase in life, had to relearn how to reapply the gratitude.
Yes.
And so I think that's a great lesson in like, we can absolutely learn a change that we need to make, or learn a new mindset or a new gratitude practice or whatever. But the way that we apply that, the actions we take, the intentions we set, is still going to change. And that's also not a thing worth beating ourselves up over. Because I've been in a similar like point before where, again, I've always been like the positive guy. I've always, blah, blah, blah. And so there's those moments sometimes where you're making a weird growth or whatever, and you're like, why can't I just figure this out? Like I've learned this before. I've been through this before. What is going on? Like, why can I not? This shouldn't be a problem because I thought I knew how to handle it.
Facts.
But again, life is always changing and evolving. We are always changing and evolving. And those tools we've collected along the way have to work and be applied in different ways the further we get.
Yes.
And I don't know if that makes sense to you, but like hearing your story here for like right now, I'm like, oh, that's such an interesting lesson of like, you learned gratitude at one point. You absolutely had that understanding in you. It wasn't that you were ignoring it. But once something changed and evolved in your life in a different way, you had to relearn how that gratitude gets reapplied. Like, does that make any sense?
No,
or am I like way off?
No, that's right on. And you're connecting the dots to my life right now. So I appreciate you, bro. That's fire. And because I didn't even think about it like that in the kind of in the macro. Just because like every new level or every different level that we go to is going to be different challenges. And sometimes it'll be the same thing in a different form. And what I had to do was remember that these are things that I prayed for. I prayed for booked appointments. I prayed for clients wanting to train. I prayed for opportunities, collaborations. Now, when they're coming, I can't be like, oh, I got to do this. Like, this is what you wanted. This is what you prayed for. Now, I did get to a point where my schedule was too crazy because I'm saying yes to everything. Yes, I can't believe they want me here. Can't believe they want me there. So there is a balance, but it's like, man, you're living a life that you prayed for. Like, let's get it done. Let's show up. Let's be intentional. Do what we need to do. Now, if we need to make some adjustments and, hey, maybe we don't do everything, but finding that good balance and realizing like, hey, yo, this is what I prayed for. This is what I wanted.
100%. And like, I do a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
I can do a lot of stuff because I enjoy doing a lot of stuff, right? But, that's a question I get often to people are like, how do you do, I don't understand. How do you do so many things? How, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I'm basing it all of what joy it brings me and what fulfillment it brings me. But I'm also very conscious of being able to say no if something truly is not something I want to do.
Yeah, facts.
Right? Like exactly everything
Have you always been that way?
No, I feel like there was a time period where, especially when you're trying to make it as like a self-employed creative or self-employed anything, realistically, just like you said, you're saying yes to everything. And then, after a while, we were like, wait, like I said yes to this job, and it's actually kind of making me hate photography now, or this is making me hate doing videos, or this is making, so it's like I need to identify what about it is making me not like it, because it's not just doing it. It's, well, something about the experience sucked, or maybe it is, hey, you shouldn't have said yes to helping this friend out for super, super, super cheap. Yeah. Because it ultimately, unfortunately, wasn't worth it. And sometimes we do have to pay attention to the money to balance ourselves out. Because if you're saying yes to a bunch of $25 clients or something, that's never going to help anything grow. And you're just going to say, oh, there's no money in this.
Exactly.
So for me, there was a little like rebalance for sure that I had to do over the years of not just saying yes to everything and being willing to try everything to see if I liked it, but also being able to acknowledge that I wasn't a quitter or a failure if I didn't like something and wanted to walk away from it.
That part's huge.
Yeah. And so nowadays, like, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, because sometimes there's still things that I'm like, oh, that sounds not that bad. Sure, I'm not doing anything that day. And then I'm like, why did I say yes to this?
Yeah, that's real.
Still happens.
I like when you said, like, sometimes you have to kind of rebalance, because I think a lot of people think they're either burnt out or now they hate what they do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just an aspect of what you do. And that's what I had to learn. There was different, clientele or different opportunities. I was going and doing a lot of things with youth, and we still do things with youth. But it was the structure in which we were coming in that burnt me out. And it wasn't youth. I love kids.
Yeah.
I love kids. I don't hate kids at all. You know what I'm saying? But it was the structure in which I was doing it that was burning me out.
Yep.
So it wasn't the whole operation. I just had to tweak a couple of things, but that does come with trial and error. And I think people can have a lot more longevity in what they do if they figure out there's aspects of this that bring me joy. What are those?
Yep.
Let me do that more. Like, let me find the joy more, because I do love this. I'm not necessarily burnt out yet. Sometimes you need a vacation or a rest. Sometimes you need to recalibrate, but I love that.
Yeah, well, like, I had a guest on this show a couple years ago at this point, and she made the point of when she learned to let herself quit is when she started to find the most value in all the things that she did. And that was like her big emphasis was like, let yourself quit, which usually we hear the opposite.
Exactly.
Don't quit, never quit. And I'm not saying that's a negative thing. That is a positive thing. Yeah, like, don't give up. But learning, like, when quitting something can be valuable, and that quitting isn't necessarily a finite decision, right? Because quitting one thing can effectively be a rebalance of something else.
That's true.
Right? And maybe it's just
making room.
Exactly. You're making room. You're pivoting. You're doing something that says, this thing right here, this aspect, this experience, whatever it is, I'm going to stop doing that because it no longer serves me for whatever purpose.
Yeah.
But like you just said, this allows me to make room for something else that will bring me more purpose and a better intention and more clarity or whatever. And like, that was something that ever since she said that, I was like, I'm going to kind of save that one in my mind, because I'm like, yeah, just let yourself quit.
Yeah.
Let yourself quit, because it doesn't mean you're stopping everything. Doesn't mean you're quitting and giving up on everything. Yeah. Just because if you stop doing certain types of classes or events, that doesn't mean that you're done serving your purpose as a coach or a trainer.
That's so good, yeah.
At all, right? If I quit doing one of the 97 creative things I'm doing,
right,
it doesn't mean that I'm leaving it all behind and throwing it all away. Sometimes there is value, and I think you said something like this earlier, of like, a lot of the times things can be serving a great purpose in our lives for the time period it's there. Yeah. Like something you said earlier sparked that thought, where I was like, that is the idea of it. Not everything has to be around forever, and something that I've really been talking with a lot of people about recently is like, I feel like everybody tends to view things as it's either this or that. It's either all or nothing. It's either this side or that side. Yeah. When usually it's the balance somewhere in the middle. That's why that's such a cliche thing, is find your balance, blah, blah, blah.
But it's real.
That's the thing, is just because, if I didn't want to do this podcast anymore, that doesn't mean that I never, ever want to do a form of a podcast again, or I don't like talking to people. Yeah. It's not all or nothing. It's maybe just in this form, this thing does not serve me anymore. What else can I do? For sure. It's not just, do I want to do this, or I don't do it at all. And I feel like a lot of us tend to get caught up in that, where again, that quitting mentality, the failure mentality of, this is just a failure and I can't do it anymore and it's done and it's gone and whatever. And it's like, well, no, the classic, like, learn from the failures. Absolutely. Turn it into something else. But I feel like a lot of people look at things as all or nothing. For sure. And we don't really give ourselves grace to fail or to step back. And I think people do it a lot because of pressures. The pressures of people. You don't want people to know that you started this program and you realized it wasn't for you because you told everybody. And they were like, yo, congratulations. Like, that's so cool. Or you took the job that you thought was going to give you so much joy and you thought was the dream job. But once you got into it and you were like, oh, man, it's not really what I thought. But I think giving ourselves permission to step back or to fail or to quit or to, try again or doing something like that
is so much power because it's true freedom. And when you're not living through the constraints of others and their judgment, then I think a lot of us can move a lot more freely, just because we don't have to hold this big facade of I have it all together. You know what I mean? Because everything's trial and error. And we don't see the businessmen or the entrepreneurs that, you know, that went bankrupt and everything like that, like, because it takes time. A lot of businessmen, their first endeavor isn't even the last one. They're just getting started. They're learning the structure of business. So I think if we're able to give ourselves permission to stop and take a step back and figure out, hey, what am I trying to do? Who am I trying to serve? How am I trying to feel? You know what I mean? I think a lot of us can do this, and we're able to kind of get to the life that we want to live. I don't think we can live like 1,000% perfect, no stress, nothing. There's always going to be work required.
Yep.
But we can do something we love. I believe you're doing what you love, and I'm doing what I love. And I want people to, even if it's not full time, there is space for you to pivot and find out what you really love and what really brings you joy.
100%. Like something, I guess maybe you call like a mantra or a thought process or whatever that I've really kind of ingrained in my brain the last handful of years is life at a default setting is extremely difficult.
Yes.
For everybody, everywhere, there's always troubles and money and deaths and hardships and all this sort of, like, life itself is difficult. If we're talking video game, its default setting is extremely hard.
Extremely hard.
So why would I do anything to make it harder on myself?
So good.
Like, that is, and I'm sure I probably got that somewhere. I don't know where it came
that's
from.
You.
But like,
yeah.
But that's the thing is, like, everything you were just saying, I'm not going to look at it as, again, I failed and there's nothing else I can do, or I'm going to look for the things that can bring me any ounce of joy possible, right?
Yeah.
Again, that's why I do so many different things, because so many different things fulfill me in different ways. Someone could listen to this podcast and be like, wow, these guys are doing all this life talk story stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then someone can go listen to my comedy podcast and be like, this is the most insane toilet humor, like wacky jokes ever, right? But I can exist as both of those things.
Yes.
Because they fulfill different parts of me and
love
give
it.
me joy in different ways. So someone could look at those and be like, you're a different person on each of these shows, right? Those are just different extensions of different parts of me.
So real.
And it's like, again, I can be the artsy, creative guy who loves making short films and podcasts and all this sort of stuff. And also, here's me shirtless and sweaty in the gym,
Yeah.
you know, doing an hour-long workout or something.
Getting
You know,
after it.
all of those things can exist. And I think that when we identify, even going back to what we were talking about earlier, of like that identity piece, like identify the things that make you happy and bring you joy, and then try to operate as much as you can to get those things, to surround yourself with
Yes.
those things, those experiences, those people, whatever it may be. Because again, everyone's pushback to anything that we're saying is, that's easy for you to say life is hard.
Yeah.
No. I'm saying it while also saying, isn't life so difficult?
Yeah. Isn't it hard enough?
It's hard. Yes, it's hard. It's hard for you. It's hard for me. It's hard for whoever's listening to this right now. It is difficult in different ways for everyone. But that doesn't mean that there are zero ways to find happiness. Going on a walk, attending a class,
Yes.
going and focusing on your fitness, taking a photo, posting online. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe, I know plenty of people who do enjoy posting on social as like kind of little journal entries and stuff,
sure.
and they just love sharing that and connecting with people over their thoughts and their feelings. Whatever it is, seek out more of those things. And that's why I have that kind of like just do it, just try it mentality.
Yeah.
Of, if something pops up in my brain and it seems interesting enough, and I can see the least amount of roadblocks possible.
Yeah.
Because if I have an idea that was going to require, like, I need $1 million worth of funding,
Right.
well, all right, that's maybe
different.
not the way we're going to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to strip that down still into like, well, what version could I do?
Yes.
How could I begin this thing? And then I'm going to see if that brings me joy.
Yeah.
And someone could sit and be like, Ross, why are you adding another thing on your list of stuff?
Yeah.
Because it sounded cool and I see a reason for it, and I think this is how it can connect with people or entertain people
Yeah.
or help people or whatever it is. I see a reason to do it, and I'm going to try it until if that reason goes away and it doesn't bring me joy, I am comfortable enough with myself to say, I tried it, I did it, and I feel good about checking it off my list and not letting it exist as a what if.
Yeah.
So cool. I tried it, it served its purpose, and it's either going to continue to grow and do that with me, or it just served me for that time frame. Cool. There we go.
Yeah.
But if I'm doing all of those things while life is actively very, very difficult, maybe all of those things, even in tiny ways, or even just one of them, is giving me enough in my tank to deal with life's difficulties.
Man, that was for me. That was 1000% for me. That's so good, because what happens is a lot of times I get into work mode so much, and that's all I see. And then there's a lot of times where I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm so burnt out. I got to wake up in the morning and do it again. But those life-giving activities. And when you asked about music is one thing that I love. And it's just as much as sports, like 50-50. Like legitimately, I love singing, rapping, playing the drums. And my girlfriend, we talk about it all the time. She sings and raps as well. And I wish I would have known younger, and it's never too late as well. So you're opening up a couple of things in me. I wish I would have known younger that I did not have to be one person. Because at church, I'm the singer and the drummer and the musician. When I went to school, no one knew I sang. I was like, oh, that's weird. Because I remember it was like 4th grade, they were doing choir auditions, and the athletes were like, oh, look at those losers in the choir. And I'm on my way walking like, oh, so we're not doing the choir. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And at those different moments, conforming to what everybody else is doing can kind of mute what you had. And I think at that moment, I started being two different people completely. Like, I'm going to do music here in the church only. People ask me to, hey, come sing at this open mic. I'd be like, nah. I'm like, why? Right. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's sacrilege or anything for me to sing at a karaoke or an open mic or anything like that. But I would be like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that, because I felt like I'm the athlete. I'm this guy. I'm the leader. You know, I'm the rah-rah, whatever. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't give myself the ability to be creative and athletic at the same time. I was like, this is too weird.
Right. And I mean, that, just like I said earlier, that was the thing that prevented me from going to the gym for years. You know, back in high school, I had a group of friends who, after school, we would go to the gym together, and that was the thing. Yeah. Once I entered the creative world, and that sort of, like, that wasn't really the environment or people that I was surrounded by anymore, I wasn't really pushing myself to continue any of that. And I was just like, I'm a creative person now. This is just, this is what I do. I am on a video set all day, and there's no time to go to everything I said earlier, right? Yeah. Until I identified, no, I want this to be a part of who I am. Mm. And like something that maybe this isn't going to make any sense, but I'm going to hope it does. Yeah. Like something else that I feel like I've identified with that identity piece that you're talking about, of I'm either this or that, or my identity is so attached to this, I can't do that. And where I found myself now, where I can be several different things, is like, even though we are often the sum of our environments and the people we spend the most time with and our experiences, like, yes, all of those things influence who we are. Yeah. I think ultimately, like, the things we are not the things we do. Yes. I think all the things we do are parts of us. Okay, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? The opposite way. Like, yeah. So we're not what we do. This is us, and this is just a little aspect. Yes. Like, for me, it's like, if someone, again, sees my comedy podcast, they'd be like, oh, Ross the comedian. I'm like, yeah, a comedian is a version of me. Absolutely. That's a branch off my tree. But I, at my core, am this person. I love comedy, and I love horror films, and I love this, and I love podcast, you know, all this sort of stuff, where, like, for a handful of years, exactly what you're saying, my identity was wrapped up in, do people on Instagram think that I am Ross, the really cool photographer? Mm. Do people think on Instagram that I'm Ross, the really cool band manager? Because for a while, like, I wanted to work in the music industry more than anything, and I was at a really low level, but, like, I wanted people to identify me as that. That's Ross. He's like a one-man record label. That's so great. He does all this stuff, right? Yeah. And if I wasn't being identified as that, again, back to the worth thing. I was like, this sucks and I suck and I must not be doing a good enough job. So I need to do more stuff for more attention, right?
Wow, yes.
Where now I found this comfort of, not to make it sound magical, but I don't know, like finding my center, finding my core, right? My real identity is a thing that can be shaped and molded into several different things while not changing what it is at its core.
Yes.
Right?
I like that.
I can be Life Talk Ross here while we're sitting here making our TED Talk.
Yeah, right.
Like I can do this and then go say poopy fart jokes on a comedy podcast.
Because it's needed.
Because it's a branch of who I am.
Yeah.
All of those things are extensions of who I am, and that's what I put out into the world, and why, again, I do so many different things, and why I think anybody can do so many different things. And all of those things also don't have to be business endeavors.
Yes, that's my issue. Because when I have that, I'm like, all right, I didn't do music because it wasn't scalable to me. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'm not going to put out music and then try to go on a show and then try to book these things. And I'm like, no, I'm not trying to do that because I only grew up doing it in church. And I tried to scale everything I did, times 10, 10X and everything like that. But I like that you said that because there's space for it. Even in a small area, even if I do music and put it on SoundCloud and put it up on my Instagram, even if I just do it.
Yep.
Because I don't know who posted it. I saw somebody was like, hey, you're a creative even if you don't put it on Instagram. And they said like Instagram needs creatives, not creatives don't need Instagram.
I literally saw the same post the other day.
Yeah. So it's essentially just saying like, regardless of what you do, you are a creator. Even if people don't know. Like I would love to put out music and different things like that. But regardless if it goes to the moon or 10 of my friends and they're like, hey, this is pretty cool. You know what I mean? That still is a part of you. And I like how you said it, like it doesn't have to change who you are. It's a part of who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, it's learning to, and again, it took me years to uncover that.
Facts.
But like everything that you were saying earlier of like, oh yeah, I would attach my identity to the thing I did as well. And that's exactly where I was.
Yeah.
And so for me, it really took, wow, like I'm identifying myself as this thing. And when I do that thing, that doesn't make me feel good anymore. What's wrong with me?
Yeah, man.
What's happening? Well, you're not finding the actual joy or fulfillment that you might have started that thing with in the first place, because to repeat ourselves after everything we've been saying, like life changes and evolves, and we are supposed to change and evolve. So
for sure,
something that we wanted 5 years ago, we might not want that anymore, and that is okay.
Absolutely.
There's something else in its place that we're supposed to be looking for, probably.
I love it.
And I think that is the thing. It's like, yes, you're a trainer and you do this and APFit and all this sort of stuff, and then guess what? You can play music whenever you want on the side, and if you want to do an at-home recording with whatever millions of software that exists now.
Right.
Put it up on SoundCloud and post it on your story one day like, hey, guess what? I made some music because I've always loved it. If you check it out, thanks.
Facts.
And then there's no worry of anything. It's like, and I have become dangerously comfortable with those things. So I'm not even sitting here saying this is the best way to operate. But I have become so like comfortable with we can do whatever we want.
That's huge. A lot of people don't even know that or believe it.
Right. And it's like when you can believe that, when you can find that self-belief of we can do anything we want with the caveat of not perfectly.
Yeah.
Because that's impossible.
Yeah, for sure.
So because I also, again, like so much of my creative career began in music. And so, I was in like a band in high school and stuff like that. And since then, since working with so many artists over the years, like I've wanted to make music again.
Yeah.
And I've identified that if and when I start that project, I genuinely am okay with like setting up whatever microphone in a room.
Yeah.
And me and a friend with an acoustic guitar play the song and it's done.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need it to be polished. I don't need it to be perfect. I don't need it to, it's like if I shot a music video with it, I would because I simply have the tools and know how to. And that would be another piece of art.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be so the music video could be the coolest thing in the world and go viral and blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely.
It would be, look at this other piece of art I made for this rest of this art.
Yeah.
And I would just post it to post it. And if 10 people listened to it, there'd be a tiny part of me like, oh man, but then instantly that'd be overtaken by, but your music exists.
Yeah, it exists.
you know,
and now you don't have to keep it in the back of your mind and think, what would have happened if I.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And again, it's just like not recklessly trying things, you know, to where it's like, this is going to cost $50,000 and I don't have that. I'm just going to go waste it. You know, it's like, yes, of course we have to be realistic with things.
For sure.
But I think that like any even unrealistic goal or dream or hobby, it might sound unrealistic when we think about it, but there is always a way.
Yes.
There's always, I've listened to more than enough interviews with people of all success ranges to know there's always a way.
Always a way.
Like, and that's the point of me making this show is I'm like, oh man, these other podcasts I listen to, people uncover the real parts of their story. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. There's always a way to do something. And I'm like, I want to talk to people about how they found their way too.
That's awesome.
You know? And so it's so again, it's like, I feel like I'm repeating so much of the same stuff over and over, but it's like, it's to emphasize that point of, again, find the things that bring us joy and the things that we want to do. And okay, what is a route, even in the tiniest way, that we can make that happen?
Yeah.
How can we chase that goal a little bit each day? If it's, you know, hey, I want to play more music. All right, is once a week, is there a day where you can go play and jam and you do whatever you want, whether a song gets recorded and released or not? It's like, how can there be time made for that?
For sure.
And who knows? You could do that for a month and be like, this is actually kind of annoying to make time for.
Right.
I guess I kind of just needed to get it out of my system a little bit. I don't actually want to play music anymore. You know, maybe. But then that goes back to the let yourself quit.
Absolutely.
You know, it's we might think we want the thing, and then we might find out, I actually don't have room for that, or I don't want to make room for that more so. It didn't really bring me the joy that I thought it was going to. I've tried things like that. There's plenty of things that I like tried because I was like, oh, this sounds like a fun idea. And then I'd get into it and I'm like, actually, no. And again, the value of trying something, it gives us an answer.
For sure.
Because one of two things happens. It's either hard and then you're like, screw that. That was too hard. I don't want to do that anymore. And we go to something else. Or we're like, dang, that's really hard. How can I make that work?
Exactly.
Then you know you want it.
And that's and it's not our only purpose. But when you're working on new projects and you're working on new passions, it gives you another sense of purpose. So when you wake up, you're like, oh, there's this new thing. And conflict and finding different ways to solve problems unlocks different things in our brain. And a lot of times we want everything to be super, super easy, and I definitely understand that. But solving those problems, hey, how can we make this happen? You getting a team together, now you guys are like, hey, we could do this and we can do that. That adds like a little bit to life, a little bit of extra, because when you wake up, you know, like, oh, we're doing this today and we got this new thing today. Instead of just going through the motions, I think people have given up, and even myself at certain times, on certain aspects of ourselves. But having those new projects and having those new things to look forward to, or old things in a different way, it just adds a little bit to life. So we're not just, you know, waking up, go to work, go home, go to this is our little bar that I go to. This is what I order, you know, and then I come home. You know, just adds a little bit extra to life, and we all need it. We all need a little splash.
Now, something on that note, you know, we keep talking about like balance and chasing the goals and all this sort of stuff. On that note of, hey, you go to the job and you do the thing and all this sort of stuff, I'm curious to know, like, years ago, like, what was the balance like for you when you were beginning to try to make the coaching and training world work while working the regular job? Like, what was that time frame like for you?
Yeah, for sure. There was not much balance, man. Okay. Because early in the morning, I would do like a 5:30, 6:30, then get ready for my 8:30 meeting. And then after that, you know, I would do like a 6:30 p.m., 7 p.m., and they would like kind of stagger, and we would train then. I wasn't getting a lot of sleep, but at the moment I was probably 23, 24, 25, 26. Energy out the wazoo. You know what I'm saying? So I'm loving doing it. I'm posting everything. Hey, here we are at 5. Here we are 6. Back at work, you know, the grind time, like that was super like Gary V time. That was my guy at that point. I still love Gary V.
Yeah.
But there was not much balance. And I remember, and I was still very, very active in my church as well. So Wednesdays, Sundays, and everything like that. And I remember being so exhausted. And I would be at work thinking about training. So I'm over here writing up workouts. I'm thinking about the new program we're going to drop. I've got pictures of all my clients and everything. People coming over here like, hey, man, I saw your post. Like, hey, why don't you do that full time? Hey, why don't you just do it? So I was battling, people knowing that I could do it full time, but me not actually believing that it could sustain me. Mm-hmm. And that could come from a lot of like a poverty mindset from growing up, me getting a job, graduating college. I'm like, okay, I did it. This job is going to be it. I can keep this job, get a little raise every now and then, have benefits. I'm solid. So even telling my parents that I wanted to quit to them was wild, It was kind of wild, but the balance was tough because when I was in the cubicle, I don't want to be dramatic, but I felt like I was kind of like in jail. Like I felt like I was caged up. Yeah. 3 screens right here. It's just not me. So it was really, really tough on me. I would take walks around the building with my headphones in, like, man, what would life be if I was not doing this? Like, how much time could I put into other things? So there wasn't much balance, but a lot of stress.
Something I'm curious about is, if right now you were talking to somebody who is in that same position, where maybe they have an outside thing they're trying to pursue, whether it's fitness or whether it's just a business idea of their own, whatever it is, but they are trying to balance it out and grind it out by like, I'm at my day job, but I've really got this thing that I'm like kind of thinking I could go all in on, but I don't know. Like, is there any like main pieces of advice that come to mind for you if you were like, okay, if I'm talking to somebody in my same position during that time, this is what I'd want them to know?
Yeah, man, that's a good one. I would tell them to take their time and stay at that job as long as you mentally can or physically can until you think you're ready. I'd also say you're never going to be ready to make the jump. There never is going to be a time, at least I don't know. I don't know if anybody was just like, all right, it's time. I'm just going to not have a job anymore. You know what I mean? I don't think you'll ever be ready, but I think you should structure, do research, get proof of concept, and already start doing what you're doing. Don't wait until you quit. Start building the brand. You have time. You have money because you have a job. Be grateful that you have a job because once that's over, it's going to get a little more difficult for you, for sure. But like, I'll say, man, take your time. And entrepreneurship is popular these days. But I would advise, like, if you really, really, really love what you want to do, be an entrepreneur. If you feel like you're in a cage when you're at work at certain jobs, I would go for it after you feel like you're kind of ready. But if it's just like, hey, I don't want to work for somebody, or hey, I want a quick buck, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship is the slowest money. Like it is not quick. But like if it's a burning desire, you got what it takes. But take your time, do your research, try to structure what you're going to do on paper. It's always going to be different once you get out into the real world. But take your time, use your business to fund your dream, and get yourself into the best position you can before you make that jump.
And we talked earlier about like that first kind of moment for you where you realized that being a trainer or being a coach was like you were with somebody who like actually got results, and you were like, oh, this is a really rad connection. I want to lean more into this. I'm also curious to know, like, even from a business standpoint, after pandemic, we get laid out, all this sort of stuff. So we're like, okay, let's make a go of this training thing. When was that next moment from even a business standpoint that kind of clicked for you where you're like, oh, this is working. Okay, we can keep doing this whole training thing. Like, sure. Do you remember that moment?
I'd say it happened gradually. When we during the pandemic, I was online. So I would go Facebook Live, Instagram Live. A couple times a week, I would have like my hashtag Venmo. This is pandemic, like no one's going anywhere. And I would stream a workout that you would follow along like with me while I was doing it.
Yeah.
On Facebook and Instagram. And at first, 5 people, 10 people. Then it climbed. We would get like 50 people on Facebook, 70 people, 30 to 40 on Instagram, all at once. And I remember we started, after that, we did Zoom workouts. So then we did group Zooms. And these were actually like paid, like you would pay, sign up. And when I started seeing the classes fill up, I'm like, people want to do this. People want to pay for this. This is awesome. And I think every level I've gotten to, there's that realization. There's sometimes I'm like now, like no one's going to show up to this class. Like you could ask my girlfriend and my sister. I say that all the time, you know, just because even today, I'm extremely blessed that 20, 10, 25 people want to work out on a Saturday morning or a Monday night or whenever we have boot camp, because it's still a blessing. People can go to Orange Theory. People can go to boxing. They can go skating. They could not work out at all. You know what I'm saying? They could go to Planet Fitness. But the fact that they chose APFit, to me, is still a blessing. So I would say even now, I'm still like, oh, man, this is something people want. They're finding community. I think that's the biggest thing. Once our group workouts started to really become the main thing we were doing instead of personal training, people started finding friends in the groups. Once I saw people hanging out by themselves, I'm like, oh, they love this. Mm-hmm. And that increased retention, which increases results. So once we were able to put groups in, people loved it. The groups were not ones to make, people feel intimidated if they had to modify some things, but it was a good uplifting group for where they were. That's when I knew that we had something that had some potential.
Yeah. Does anything come to mind when I ask you, like, what's your favorite experience you've had as a trainer? Like, is there one story, one incident, one person, anything like that comes to the forefront of your mind? Or
I'd say too, like, there's an African American wellness walk that happens. It's coming up in August. I don't know when this will air, but the last 2 years I was able to warm up all the runners, and there was like 30,000, African American and allies, so everybody, right? People up on the stage, and they were like, hey, we want you to warm up the runners. And they're like, everybody's waiting. There's a big stage, just me and the DJ. And I called my team up, and we hit the swag surf. So we're going side to side, and then we get everybody jumping and warmed up. And my team was just up there in the front with me, and they were on stage. And I was like, hey, we only have room for like 4 people on stage. A bunch of them snuck on stage. It was like too many people. They were like, don't jump on the stage because it's like small. Like that event was just crazy. Like, because it's like, man, like my mind is blown right now, completely. And I'd say the second one, man, is just transformations, all types. Like there was a girl named Michaela who, and she's okay with me telling this story, but she would struggle with anxiety so bad that she would have to pull over her car when she was even coming to training sessions. Changing her nutrition and changing her workouts. She didn't have to take her anxiety medications, and not saying the anxiety is completely gone, but she's a night and day different person. Seeing that, there was a story of a girl who always needed the extra seatbelt when she was on the airplane. And for her, that was embarrassing. It took up a little extra time because you had to come back and blah, blah, blah. And I remember the first time she was able to take a trip and she didn't need it. And she sent me a picture, and I was like, man, this is why I do what I do. So those days of waking up in the morning, like, this is why. And people are like, how do you always get up? It's because, like, I got 5 or 6 people waiting on me. And they want not only results, they want that release, and they need that time for themselves. So those moments, like, I love the warm-up moment because that was a cool kind of full circle. Mm-hmm. But those small moments of transformation and giving people confidence and letting them see what I see. I see a strong person. I see a confident person. I see somebody who's strong. And once they're able to see that, see what I see and see what others see, it just opens up a whole new world for them. So I love the transformations. Man.
What's the biggest lesson you have individually learned? We've talked about, I'm sure there's tons of details and side stories and all sort of stuff that we kind of skimmed over, but like, talked about your story here today and how you got involved in all this stuff and finding yourself and all the identity and all that sort of stuff. Is there anything that comes to mind when I ask if there's one biggest lesson you feel like you've personally learned about yourself, about anything? What comes to mind?
I'd say 2 things. You can't pour from an empty cup. there was a lot of times, and we've talked about that grind culture, that I thought I could put everything on my back, make every session, increase them. All I need is more clients. That's simple enough. Let's add some more sessions. And then you're like, oh, I'm dead. I can't maintain this. So I would say, man, a self-care routine, like a real one. Like I always went to the gym, so that's a part of it, but it's walking. I started walking, not running, not sprinting up the hills, not going to Hoover Dam, walking for a slow pace. That's one thing that really, really helped my mental health, helped me get clarity. I'm not in a rush, just moving slow. So walking has really helped me with that. But, pouring from an empty cup and just like not taking vacations and not doing all this and thinking that it's admirable that I'm not going out. Like, oh, I'm not doing that. I got to do this. And that's not like, you don't get a medal for that. You know what I'm saying? So I'd say that, and I'd say the power of a team. Like our business grew when I started trusting Coach D, started trusting Coach Tracy to handle some of these camps when I'm not there, to handle registration of different things. If I have an idea, hitting the group chat, not trying to do it myself. So I'd say self-care, and then like the importance of having a team around you, a team that cares about you, a team that's good, like, and they're both incredible at what they do. Shout out Coach Tracy, shout out Coach D. So I'd say those two things.
Yeah. Another random question for you.
Yeah.
Let's pretend time travel is real. You can go back to any point in your life, to any version of you, and share something with him. Where are you going and what are you telling him?
Man, I was offered a role in a musical that I turned down. I was going to be singing and dancing and doing everything. I would tell myself what you just told me, that it's okay to be more than one thing. And you don't have to fight for people's approval so much. They like you. It's cool. And if they don't, it's okay. If the big football guys are going to judge you, it's okay. You know what I'm saying? They're battling with something as well. But I would tell my younger self, man, like, it's okay to show people the different versions of you. And that's the only thing. I don't have too many like regrets. I know we all have regrets, but I think if I would have did that, that would have set me in a different trajectory. Not saying like I'm gonna quit basketball and quit everything, but it would have made it a little different. So I would just tell myself, be free, be who you are.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So, dude, what's next? Like, if you're thinking about like where everything's at right now, like what are there any like dreams, goals, upcoming things that you're like, this is where I'm trying to go. These are the next phases. We've been talking about a lot of changes and pivots and evolving and all this sort of stuff throughout this entire episode. When you think ahead of what you want to do with APFit or anything outside of that, like, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple main things. One thing, we want to own our own facility. So we rent space in different facilities, and we've kind of been growing out of a lot of different places that we've been blessed to be in. So I'd say that definitely is on track. A place where people can, find that community and feel free when they come in, and feel like even if you don't feel up to par, you know what I mean, then you can start here, because there's modified versions of everything, extremely inclusive environment. That's what I want to create. Mm-hmm. And then on the youth side, I've been feeling a really, really strong calling. I said I don't like kids earlier, but that's not true. On the youth side, we're diving a lot more into the youth. I was blessed to be a part of a mentoring group for ICE mentors, and it was kind of some, I don't want to say like troubled youth, but kids who had, had some different run-ins. And it was my first time dealing with that population in a mentoring way. And the way it touched my heart, man, the way they cling to me and the way they asked me questions and about college and about different things, and it fed me more than I thought it would. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I even get emotional talking about it, just because a lot of these young men didn't grow up with their fathers. And the only person they looked up to might have been the drug dealer on the block, because he was cool, or the rapper that they see on TV, or somebody hooping. So diving more into the youth, I actually just put in an application for a role, to help with youth. And I never thought that I would, work again, get another job. Yeah. Been out here freelancing for a while, but it means that much to me. You know what I mean? So I'd say the youth and then our own facility. Those are the two big things.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Is there anything else with like the youth side of things that you want to touch on? Like before, we'll start to wrap up here in a few, but like, is there anything you feel like we haven't talked about, or you're like, dude, there's this whole thing with community or youth or anything that like, if we don't talk about, I'm going to leave here like bummed out. Like,
no, I mean, not necessarily, man. I would just say like, there's a lot of pressures for youth right now, obviously because of social media and comparison. And a lot of these kids think they should be here and here or have this and have that. And to be able to let them know that there's alternative ways to be successful in this world. When I grew up, I didn't think that I would have success in career because math, science, those different things, like I was very average. So I was like, in a workplace environment, if this is what quantifies success, then I'm not going to do well. So one thing I try to do is let them know that there are alternative paths, and a lot of them know, but a lot of them still don't, to be successful. That's one thing. We touch on a lot of mental health and physical health, and we tie them in. So we talk about how, like, physical health can be the catalyst to achieving a lot of goals in your life. And we talk about mental health, and we do check-ins and different things like that. So they're young, impressionable minds. They're very smart. They feed me as much as I feed them. So it's something I do want to dive into. And I used to think I had to like be a youth pastor or something. I used to think I had to be an elder. But now I feel so much freedom that I'm like, yo, I'm just out here. Like Jesus was out in the streets. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't always in the synagogue being super holy. So I love the fact that I'm going to be able to impact even more youth and do it in a way that's smarter. I was trying to like do it one by one, the same way I was doing training, but that kind of burnt me out. Now that I'm able to collaborate with these great groups that already have the roster of the youth, they already have programming, they just need me to come in and do my thing. That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, dude, I got two final questions for you.
Okay.
Both like formal questions. But one, something new I've started to do here on the show lately is I've become big on bucket lists. So the idea of not so much the cliche version of a bucket list, but like, what do you want to do before you die, right? And, sure, it can be like, oh, I want to skydive or whatever, but like something, really specific, right? So I've been asking guests, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I want to kind of collect any answers anybody gives me and share them in some way.
That's awesome.
Because with the idea of a bucket list, I think it's most valuable when you speak about the things that you want to do.
That's so good.
To either, one, put them into the universe and bring them to the forefront of your mind of, hey, wait, I actually did want to do that. How can I start to do that? Or you ultimately never know who's listening. And I have literally experienced that firsthand where at some of the community hangs that I've been telling you about, I would randomly, say something that I wanted to do on my bucket list, and literally somebody in the room was like, wait, what'd you say? Because I can help you with that. And literally checked it off the list.
Wow.
So I think there's some fun value in speaking something into existence. Now, maybe you don't even have something. Maybe you're like, dude, you just set that up and I got nothing. But if you were to pick an item, if you were to put on your bucket list or to take off your bucket list, does anything come to mind of something that you want to do?
Man, this is, there's two things. I've always say there's two things. But one, I would say, like, I want to throw a huge, like, fitness retreat. And this is doable for sure. But, like, chef, cold plunge for the workout, after the workout, mental health, and some journaling. You know what I mean? But, like, do it somewhere really dope. Like, do it somewhere, like an island somewhere tropical. Fly the team out. If you completed X, Y, and Z, you're going free. You know what I mean? But, this is how we do it. My team works extremely hard, and I would love to, send them off on a vacation, and we all can do it together. So I'd say that's one. And then second, bro, I want to be a dad, man. Mm-hmm. Really, really want to be a dad. Obviously a husband as well. But that's been on the forefront. I never thought that would be on my list. Not saying I was like a player or anything, but like,
no, I get it.
Now I see kids and I'm like, man, I can't wait. So being a family man, being a husband, having a little junior, not necessarily junior, but a little kid.
Yeah.
So I'd say those are my two things.
That's awesome.
Kind of simple, man.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Well, final question for you, and then we will wrap this up and call it a podcast. So I end every one of these episodes with the exact same question. So now it's your turn. So right now, I want you to pretend like everybody in the world can hear you speak. Every single person everywhere is listening to us talk right now. You get this moment right now in time with a live mic connected to everybody to share one thing with everybody. In this moment, what would you want everyone to know, and what do you want everyone to hear?
That's awesome. I would say that you lack nothing. Everything that's valuable has already been placed inside you. It's going to take a little self-inventory to figure out exactly what everything is, but you lack nothing. And once you're able to change the perspective in your life and how you see your life, you'll have so much freedom and joy. So everything that's inside you is all you need. And once you're able to live in that and figure out what you have, you know, there's joy on the other side. So that's all I would say, man. That's all I would say.
Dude, this was such a fun conversation.
This is awesome. I appreciate you, man.
I am so happy that we got to make this happen.
Yes,
I cannot thank you enough for sitting here with me for however long it's been and sharing all the things and even indulging in my rambles
Absolutely.
on this too. I really appreciate it. Before we officially say goodbye, we got to tell the people where they can get in contact with you, where they can find everything that you do. Do you want them to find that stuff? If so, where can they do it at?
Yeah, so it's _ APFIT on all social media. And for any bookings, we do corporate wellness and we do faith and fitness. Get apfitness@gmail.com. Other than that, you can catch me on the street doing some workouts with some random people. And we just love it, man. I love getting people to move their body and transform their lifestyle.
Dude, well, we didn't move our bodies, but thank you for sitting here with me.
I appreciate you.
For 2 hours and talking about your life and everything, man. I appreciate it. This was a blast.
Thank you. You're awesome at what you do, bro.
This was so fun. Yes,